I never imagined that a day so regular could cut so deep. It was late afternoon, the muted drone of keyboards swelling around the open-plan office, fluorescent lights reflected in tired computer screens. My desk was pressed against the far wall by the window, littered with digital sketches and post-it notes. Despite the freezing air from the AC, sweat prickled my collar as I watched Stuart, my boss, pacing up the aisle with a hand calloused from years of managing other people's best ideas. My screen flashed my half-built wireframes for a project management tool, a side project I'd been nurturing like a stray kitten. Sometimes, on lunch breaks, I'd poke at the code, hunched in the quiet meeting room, cultivating what I thought was the seed of something big. All of it was barely tolerated and everyone knew it. The click of Stuart's expensive shoes stopped right next to me. "Lachlan, we need those sales reports you promised." "Not another bloody app concept," he said, loud enough for the neighboring desks to hear. His eyes flicked to the window, then the wireframes, the unwise open tab with my side project's name in bold blue. "Are we paying you for this? Or to actually do your job?" It was humiliating. Every time this happened, there was a chuckle in the background. Angie from finance, who made a theatre of rolling her eyes, and Tom, who'd whisper "founder vibes, mate" into his coffee, not bothering to hide the sneer. Stuart's lips twitched into a thin smile, convinced he'd made a teachable moment. I tried to answer with dignity, "It's after hours, I just wanted to." But my voice barely reached him. He was already turning, tossing a final bone. "The only thing that will launch around here is your replacement if you keep this up. Let's drop the fantasy, Lachlan." A few laughed, their faces half hidden behind monitors. Afterwards I sat, wrists trembling under the desk, my cursor blinking in a little box of nowhere. My job was okay. My salary paid the rent, kept mum off my back and bought enough groceries to keep me honest. But I carried the sting of humiliation with me, all the way out the glass doors that evening and into the grinding, blaring city outside. Sydney's dusk was pink and agitated, the trains howling above Broadway, kids skateboarding around curb cuts. I liked the city best when nobody was watching, when I could weave between sidewalk traffic and pretend I was just passing through. That night I walked without thinking, the cheap backpack cutting into my shoulders, the endless loop of their laughter playing in my head. When I got home, my flatmate Rachel looked up from the couch, TV remote in one hand, bowl of instant noodles in the other. "You look rough," she said, frowning. "Stuart again." I let my backpack drop onto the dining chair and shrugged. "Yeah, same song. He thinks I'm wasting my time, that my idea's a joke." Rachel sipped her noodles, thoughtful. "Mate, it's always a joke until it works, but hey, no shame in just chilling out. You could always update your CV and look elsewhere." But I wasn't ready to give up. That evening, I opened my laptop in the low light, sifting through the lines of code that had preoccupied my nights for months. Keyscope, the idea was simple, almost embarrassingly so. A SaaS tool for managing digital contracts and collaborative documents, sort of a better glue for small teams. I'd built prototype after prototype, refined the interface, read blogs, messaged strangers on startup forums, and spent my weekends wrestling AWS until the arms of my desk chair wobbled under me. Still, every so often, Mum would call from the suburbs. "You're not thinking about that silly web thing again, are you?" she'd ask, the TV blaring in the background. Last Christmas, my brother Callum led a toast over the kitchen table. "To little bro who'll be Australia's next Mark Zuckerberg, you just need a billion more lines of code and a fresh start." Everyone laughed, even Dad, even Auntie Jan. No one believed in Keyscope except me. The next morning at work, I moved more quietly than usual. No one looked up as I passed. Days fell into weeks, the humiliation bruising but somehow fermenting into patience. I ran on quiet stubbornness. In the hours after work, I adapted my pitch, tweaked my user flows, and stalked business forums for test users. I heard ridiculous tossed around more than once, a word that trailed after me at family gatherings, at mates' barbecues, on busy cafe mornings where Dad would sigh heavily and say, "You sure you're not going to get stuck? A normal job's a good thing." I'd leave the family table feeling stripped and small, clinging to my pride with white knuckles. One evening, when I was halfway through rewriting a key API call, Rachel shuffled into the kitchen. Her hair was wild, her t-shirt baggy. "You don't even eat anymore," she said. "Come out, drink a little, live a little, let it breathe." I pressed save, closed the laptop, and forced myself out into Sydney's effervescent Friday. Crowds spilled across Darling Harbour, music from a sax busker circling the square. We walked in silence and I wondered why trying felt so shameful. On the walk home, I found myself promising her, almost whispering, "One day I'll show them. All of them, I'll make it, just once." She looked up through the city haze. "I'd like to see that," she said. Her hand was warm on my arm. Months later, after countless cold applications and demo emails, I got a reply. A small Sydney coworking space offered 5 trial users. Then, a week after that, an edtech startup in Surrey Hills signed up for a paid plan. The moment was raw, astonishing. I stared at the striped notification on my phone, holding my breath as the numbers rolled across the cracked screen. $10. It was only $10, but there it was, proof that the idea wasn't absurd. My hands shook as I called Rachel, who screamed into the phone loud enough for both of us. Growth trickled at first, then gained momentum. I posted about Keyscope in Slack groups. I sent cold DMs to strangers on LinkedIn, swallowed my pride, and hustled after every testimonial, every 5-user firm. I lived off cheap bread and 2-minute noodles. I worked before dawn and after midnight, monitoring server uptime, answering queries with a trembling professionalism. It still felt like make-believe synthetic until tech sites began to notice. A local startup blog ran a headline, "Sydney SaaS underdog finds its niche." My phone buzzed with new signups, but success when it started was private. No one noticed at first because I was still the app guy. At work, Stuart made jabs about moonlighting. At home, Dad tutted over the phone about jumping ship. I watched users multiply across spreadsheets. When the revenues topped $5,000 a month, I sat alone in my dim kitchen, the city's nightlight glowing in, and finally allowed myself to think, maybe it wasn't ridiculous. I handed in my resignation a week later. Stuart's lips pursed, his eyes narrow. "You sure?" he asked, forced to shake my hand. "Yeah," I told him, "I've finally got my launch." His laugh was hollow. "Well, mate, best of luck in the land of daydreams. We'll see you back soon, I'm sure." The word ridiculous just behind his tongue. All at once I was outside the glass doors, no desk, no safety net. The sky was overcast and brisk wind pushing hard from the harbour. I grinned alone on the footpath. What followed was a kind of wild, private ordeal. I went all in. I pitched to angel investors at awkward breakfast meetings in Piermont. I took calls from Singapore and Auckland in the middle of the night, every bit of nervous energy pooling into my voice, hiding my panic. Some days I felt a perverse pride in living just above empty. I worked out of the same cheap coworking cubicle, surrounded by other founders with wild eyes and grand plans, caffeine thick in the air. We nodded to each other, brothers and sisters in Excel. By the time Keyscope landed its first major enterprise client, a medical logistics firm with 40 staff, I had emptied the last of my savings. I walked out of the signing meeting on Pitt Street, called Rachel, and sobbed on the footpath. She came to meet me and watched as I cradled a lukewarm coffee, hands shaking. "It's real," she said, eyes searching my face. "You did it, you really did." I registered the company as Keyscope Thai Limited. I designed a new logo, filed real taxes. Partners came aboard. I hired 2 engineers on contract. I rented a postage stamp office with a view of the old rail line. Our first year's revenue crossed $300,000. TechCrunch picked up the story. The local paper ran a photo of me, baggy-eyed and smiling impossibly, the caption calling me a self-taught founder and Sydney's SaaS upstart. I sent it home. No reply. None of my family mentioned it, even at Christmas dinner, when Callum told a story about some bloke he'd met at work who'd bylaid on tech dreams and came to his senses. The only comment was from Auntie Jan, who said, "It's good you've got something normal now, Lachlan." I didn't correct her. I quietly poured champagne, smiling into my glass, letting the old humiliation flicker and die. 3 years passed. Keyscope grew in its own humble way, with steady SaaS revenue and bigger clients in real estate and logistics. I hired a team of 6, most remote, and built out customer support. I emailed users every week, built relationships, stumbled through. The shame faded, replaced by a quiet satisfaction. Then, out of the blue, I got an invitation to present Keyscope at the Sydney Tech Expo at the ICC. My little company would be featured alongside global names, Atlassian, Canva, a veritable parade of Australian tech royalty. My team was thrilled. "Massive exposure," said Suki, our lead engineer, her cheeks flushed with possibility. "We have to go all out, boss." We rented a modest exhibition stand, ordered banners, printed fresh shirts. On the Friday of the expo, I barely slept, arriving before sunrise as the city buzzed with anticipation. I watched teams assemble LED displays, saw founders, investors, and government officials clink glasses over pastries. Keyscope's booth looked small against the Atlassian and Canva giants, but I felt tall, with a team that wore my old shame as a badge of honor. As the expo filled, I recognized faces from a lifetime ago. College friends, old employers, even a few ex-colleagues. I shook hands, offered demos, signed up trial users. By lunchtime, our queue stretched down the aisle. It was halfway through a pitch explaining our newly launched API that I heard a familiar voice over the crowd. Stuart, hands clasped behind his back, was walking down the halls with two suits from my old job. I froze, the texture of old nerves tightening inside my stomach. Their group drifted closer, scanning booths, Stuart's gaze sharp. He stopped in front of our stand, brow creased. Keyscope, he read the logo aloud as if searching for a memory, then his eyes locked with mine. Lachlan. The recognition was instant. Stuart glanced at the banner, then at me, then back at the slick touchscreens and the team giving live demos to city councillors and tech buyers. For a moment, he looked like a man retracing lost steps. He didn't sneer. He just blinked, surprised, almost vulnerable. "Is this yours?" he asked, voice less certain now. "It is," I replied, steady. Tom, the old office nuisance, peered over Stuart's shoulder, mouth agape. "Wait, you're the guy." Lachlan from the "Yeah, wow." One of the event organizers sidled up with a film crew, nodding a greeting, and introduced me as the Sydney SaaS founder closing the biggest contracts with less than 10 staff. Cameras flashed. Stuart stepped back. "He's presenting at the main forum at 2, the organizer told the group. "Biggest growth this year in the SMB sector." I saw them swallow hard, their disbelief, the embarrassment, the realization. This was the concrete proof, not boastful, not theoretical. My company's logo on the Expo guide, the CEO badge around my neck, journalists waiting to talk. Stuart looked up, caught between professional poise and regret. For once his voice was soft. "Well, looks like you showed us all, mate. Congratulations." He smiled, small and real, and offered a hand. I shook it, feeling the humiliation peel away. Tom muttered something and shuffled off. Stuart lingered, searching my face for a sign, but I only nodded. I didn't have to say anything. Later that day, the press asked me about the early years. I kept my answers measured. "There's always skepticism," I told a tall newswoman in a blue dress. "Sometimes it pushes you down, sometimes it gives you patience." We stood at the window, the city burning gold in the evening light, tech banners undulating in the sea breeze. I spotted my parents in the crowd as the afternoon wore on, their faces tense with pride, panic, and something wordless. Mum waved, Dad too stiff to smile but present, his hands tucked in his coat. I sat with them over coffee in the bustling lobby, colleagues and strangers brushing past. Mum clasped my hand. She was crying quietly in her careful way. "I'm sorry we doubted you, love, you made us proud. You made everyone here proud." Even Dad, usually silent, squeezed my shoulder. "That ridiculous thing, a lot of people talk, but you made it happen." I went home that night on hollow legs, overwhelmed and weightless. Sydney glowed below as my driver traced the long arc of the road home. I stepped into my little apartment, peeling off the lanyard, seeing my own reflection in the window as the city flickered behind me. The air hummed with new possibility, subtle this time, stable. Rachel poured us 2 glasses of cider at our kitchen table and nudged my elbow. "I think they believe now," she said. "Maybe you can believe it too." I grinned at her and let the city's night flood in. I thought of every ordinary moment, the late-night trains, the humiliations, the hunger, the patience it took to fight ridicule and come out breathing. Suddenly none of it felt ridiculous. I was home, not victorious but quietly, finally free.